Donna, the floor is yours for the next 45 minutes. Come on in. Oh, you're muted. There we go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Donna, and I am an alcoholic. And they say that the speaker sets the tone, because depending on the message that the speaker carries, the sharers back usually follow suit. But in this meeting, it's the host of the meeting that sets the tone. So thank you so much, Eric. For a newcomer, you make AA feel so welcome. And even for somebody whose sobriety date is August 5th, 2000, you made me feel very relaxed. I feel relaxed anyway when I share because I realize that there is no separation between me and you. I used to wear glasses, and on one hand, I hated wearing glasses, but on the other hand, I loved wearing glasses because I needed something to hide behind because I felt too vulnerable if you saw me and I thought that you saw inside of me, the fear inside of me, the low self-esteem inside of me. So fear has been a part of my life, most of my life. So has disobedient. And I realized being disobedient as a child is a sign of wanting to be in control. So even as a child, I did not want to listen to my parents because, in my estimation, they were too strict. So I said that my sobriety date is August 5th, 2000, and I love when we read chapters of the big book that start with the word we. And for those of us who are big book thumpers, the W, the size of the font on those pages really signify how powerful and unified this we is. Every time I get to a chapter that starts with we, it makes me realize what I walked into 25 years ago. I remember I felt the warmth and I felt the fact that it was okay to cry. I felt that I was around some people that understood me. But it took for me on August 5th, 2000, I was too exhausted to try to stop drinking. I was exhausted, quite frankly. It wasn't the first time I had 50 cents in my pocket. And I always feel like, my story is being redundant because, my story never really changes. The only thing that changes is I never know what I'm going to share every time I'm in front of you guys. And I always share current experiences because I can't live off of yesterday's experience because my mind doesn't remind me of how powerful God is. My mind doesn't remind me that things are going to be okay. I have a mind that constantly wants to make me feel that things are impossible. I've been on this path long enough that I realize that the path just leads to the now. And in the now, everything is fine. So I didn't know that on August 5th, 2000, that I would be entering into a whole new life. That never occurred to me. I did know that something powerful had happened and I never had to drink again. I didn't know what had happened, and I have been describing it the same way for 25 years that a power burst inside of me. And I was able to verbalize that openly to my mom, who, God bless her, I put her through so much fear because she never knew where I was on any given moment. Because when I went on a run, I went on a run. But when she opened the door and I didn't have a key because she didn't trust me, and here it is, I'm 44 years old and I don't have a key to get into the house. And I remember that I hated going home and I stayed out more because I was so afraid of what she was going to say. Never did I think about what she was going through. See, my mind doesn't think about you. It thinks about you in relationship to me, what you're going to think about me, what you're going to say to me. But this particular time, I said to my mom that I'm done. And I have never had a drink again. The obsession was lifted. But see, this mind never let me see how powerful that was. Never let me see that it was a miracle. I just took it for granted. I was able to get on the subway and go to a detox, and I didn't stop at the liquor store. I didn't stop on the train and go to an after hours because I'm a New York City girl. And trust me, I felt like I knew every after hours in Manhattan. I even found an after hours on Third Avenue that had slot machines. Like it was like a casino in Manhattan. And I loved that life. I'm gonna be honest with you. I loved that life. I loved everything that was carefree. Even in high school, I was not a study kind of girl. As when I knew I was able to get by in life, I got by. Things were very easy for me. As much as things were easy, I made my life complicated because I kept believing myself that I wasn't worthy. And I realized when I did some inventory that I had assigned myself the role of the victim. And it was interesting. I remember when I did inventory and that revelation became clear, I couldn't call enough of my sober friends to say, oh my God, I assign myself the role of a victim. Most people would think, well, why are you so excited about being being revealed? Because it answered so many questions that I didn't have. It gave me answers I didn't have questions to because I was too busy blaming other people. And I realized that I was putting myself behind the eight ball. It's how I believed about myself, and the fact that I also believed what you thought about me was my truth. Today, I realize that what you think about me is your opinion of me. And perhaps your opinion of me is based on your beliefs about how you gauge people, and it has nothing to do with me. But that took being on this path, that took me writing inventory to see that I'm no more, no less than you. See, the very same people, it's interesting. I wanted you to give me everything I needed. I needed you to love me. I needed you to need me. I needed you to welcome me. I needed you to respect me. But the kickaboo juice was that I wasn't doing that for me. Well, damn, Donna, that sounds kind of selfish. See, I was too busy thinking that my life was contingent upon everything outside of me. And so that was a very unsteady life because I was only okay when things went my way. And when things didn't go my way, I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to deal. So life started dealing me. You know, I started drinking. First time I drank alcoholically. I come from a middle-class family. My father's Panamanian, so there was a lot of drinking, a lot of partying. My mom's from New Orleans. She's one of 13. And New Orleans is like the drink capital of the world, I think. And so a lot of my aunts and uncles drank a lot. Some died from this illness. So it wasn't like I lived in a household where there wasn't any alcohol. But I also was raised with a family who my mom was very strict. And I could not follow rules. If I wanted to do something, I was going to do something. I went to Catholic school. Didn't even dawn on me that my parents worked really hard to pay that tuition. I kept cutting class. In Catholic school, we would smoke pot. Before we went to religion class, we would debate about Jesus. I mean, we were arrogant. And so as I got older and I got more involved in life, I realized that I never really could stand on my own. I always had to be part of a group, but in being in the group, I hid in the group. I used to teach ballroom dancing. I'm a hustle dancer I'm a 70s. I graduated from high school in 1974, so I'm telling you my age. So we grew up when it was called disco. And even then I couldn't dance. Like I could never really dance because I was too concerned about what you thought about me. See, it's interesting. I dance today. I'm much older today, but I have more fluidity in my dancing because I'm connected to spirit. I'm not worried about what you think. I'm able to really dance from within. And I could never do that before because, like I said, I always thought the spotlight was on me. And if the spotlight was on me, you were criticizing me. I was on the cover of a hair magazine. This is funny. So me and my sister my younger sister were on the cover of Hair magazine, like we're getting our face painted. And after the photo shoot, there were so many people that were looking at me as I was walking the streets of New York City. I couldn't handle the attention. I ducked in a doorway and I wiped off the makeup. That was my life. I could never be. And so, of course, drinking and drugging became my solution. I was able to be at all these parties and think I was Miss Thing. I was a great big such a much. Then all of a sudden, A-list parties turned into B-list parties, turned into sitting up in some dens. This is Alcoholics Anonymous, and I respect the singleness of purpose, but another substance took a hold of me. And I started living my life like I was dying. But it was so important that I still got to work. It was so important that I show up like I was okay. Like I told you, my whole life was contingent about what you thought about me. And I didn't want you to know that I was not normal. I didn't want you to think that I was less than you. And so I'm dragging myself to work. Oh my God. I couldn't, I was willing to go through all kinds of pain just to show up so you would want me and like me. August 5th rolled around, and trust me on this, I was too tired. I was tired of going to bed, shaking my head. Oh my God, like, how am I going to figure? I mean, I don't think most people could ever really live a life the way we have lived a life. Living life like we're dying and still trying to live and trying to figure out how do I make up for what I did the last 3 nights, waking up and not knowing what's going on and pretending like it's okay. Getting into a jam and people looking at us and we're trying to convince them we're okay. We must look really peculiar to people that we can't even admit that things are wrong. See, it was very hard for me to admit that I had a problem because I didn't know what the solution was. And so I was convinced I needed to fix this on my own. Because it was something about Alcoholics Anonymous, I was not going there. Until August 5th rolled around, I was willing to go to any length. And any length for me, I didn't come into AA right away. I went through to a therapeutic community, more fondly called a TC. I was not mandated. It's the kind of place that people went to. Either you go to jail or you beat the bid and you go to a TC. So there was a lot of drug dealers in there. There was a lot of people who were mandated by the courts. I look back and I see how instrumental that was that God sent me there first. It gave my mom an opportunity to rest her head for 18 months because she knew where I was at. See, sometimes we don't see how God uses each of us for each of us. And so my mom was able to rest, and I was at this place and I was scared. You better believe I was scared because I had never been in an institutional type place like that. But interestingly enough, that God had angels watching over me. There was a counselor that gave me an NA book. There was another counselor that gave me a big book because they sensed that I meant business. I learned very simple things. I learned how to make my bed army style. I learned how to clean because I was living very slovenly. When I would come home from a run, I would just crash. I wouldn't clean. I was living foul. Being up for 2 and 3 days, trust me, your hygiene is not the most important thing on the list. And that's how I lived. I remember coming home on August 5th, 2000. Oh my God, I can only imagine what I smelled like and what I looked like. Didn't have enough money to get on the subway, didn't have enough money to get on the bus, but I knew I had to get home because the people that were hanging out with me threw me out. The transit workers, both of them let me on the train, let me on the bus, and I was able to get on that block. And what they didn't know, that God used them. This is how I tell the story today. God used their compassion to make sure that I got home. I was always grateful. But they say that we discover spiritual principles, and I realized it was the compassion they had for me. And so I'm in this therapeutic community, and I have these people that are watching over me because there is a whole lot of untreated behavior. But I was protected by it. I didn't know half of the things that were going on. And so what happened, I was able to get job training. See, for me, the jobs I was holding during my drinking, I was working in after hours in New York City. I'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go to work. When I ran out of options in New York, I fled to South Bend, Indiana, walked into a bar and felt like I was right back in New York City. And I hit pay dirt. I found all my friends right up in that bar, drug dealers, party people. And it was like I hadn't left New York. Prior to going to South Bend, I tried to commit suicide, but interestingly enough, that wasn't enough for me to convince I had a problem. But see, because my mind still had some things for me to try. So you can live your life like you're dying, but if your mind is still going to convince you that there's some things you can still do to beat the game, you're going to do it. And like for me, I hadn't done a geographic yet. So it was another 10 years of living in South Bend, Indiana. And I hit a bottom. I slunk out of that city. I don't know if slunk is a word, but that's how I felt. I talked about the angels that were protecting me in that therapeutic community. Oh my God, there was a woman, and I forgot her name now. Her and her husband rented a U-Haul truck and drove me and my possessions from South Bend, Indiana to Queens, New York. I still wasn't done. I told my mom that I just needed to go to outpatient program. This was before August 5th, 2000. And so I went to an outpatient program. But see, I was dope fiending. See, I knew how to raise my hand and say, hi, I'm Donna. I'm here for today because I was still drinking. I wasn't doing the other thing, but I was still drinking because I didn't see that drinking was a problem. Because see, my mind was telling me I didn't have a problem with alcohol. So it took another 9 months before August 5th, 2000. And I knew at that point I was done. So I get what I need to get out of that therapeutic community. See, what I didn't know was that when I left there, God was going to put me in a job that I would never apply for because I didn't think I was good enough. So I got job training. So instead of working in restaurants and after hours, now I'm in the corporate world. And I'm like, okay, now it makes sense why I had to make that stop before coming to AA. See, I had to come to AA so I can learn how to live. See, I got the job training in that other place. And while I was in there, so I go to AA and I'm hearing all the shares. I'm hearing some funny shares, some drunkalogs. I'm hee-heeing and I'm kikiing with everybody. But I started to get a little nervous because I'm about to graduate this place and I don't know what I did in 18 months that was going to prepare me to live and what was going to stop me from a drink because I didn't realize that the obsession was lifted because I told you my mind downplayed August 5th, 2000. I didn't realize that the problem was removed, it had been relieved, and it had disappeared until I went and I read that big book. And August 5th, 2000 made so much goddamn sense to me because I realized I didn't stop drinking. Something happened to me. So I'm sitting in the meetings, afraid to go home. And the thing that's so crazy, you know what I was really afraid of? I'm 45 years old. I'm afraid to go home and ask my mom for the key. Thank God I heard Chris share. And she shared what she was like, what happened, and what she's like today, and what she was like, I still was like. And I'm like, how did you go from here to there? And the steps on the shade became alive in her share. See, because I had been sitting there and looking at step one, my life is, I'm powerless over alcohol. And after that dash, my life is unmanageable. But that looking at that step didn't have enough depth and weight. See, because my mind and my ego will look at that step and go, okay, all right, so you're powerless. Unmanageability, okay, you lost your job. My unmanageability to me was everything outside of me. I had no idea that the unmanageability flows from the powerlessness of that I had over alcohol. The power that alcohol had over me flowed into the unmanageability of my life. That's how I really meant to say that. And so I'm so grateful that Chris came up to me and she said, Donna, are you willing to go to any length never to drink again? I had been hearing just don't drink for today. And trust me, I was like, I don't want to think about alcohol every day. That's how I heard that. So a year and a half in sober and a couple of months into AA and still living in that therapeutic community. I couldn't have a sponsor that I could call every day because I didn't have phone privileges because it was that kind of place. But all I had was this big book workshop on Saturday. Chris had directed me to Loretta and Sydney, and they were sitting in a church on 138th Street, Lenox Avenue. And they were taking alcoholics and addicts through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous line by line. They had met Joe Hart at a conference in Canada. And this guy, Larry Greenberg, in Staten Island. So there was some people doing the big book. And I felt like for the first time, I was giving myself permission to discover what was wrong with me because I didn't know what was wrong with me. I didn't even understand. I didn't even know if I was an alcoholic, but I just raised my hand and said I was one because all of you people did that, but I didn't even know what that meant. Because for a very long time, I didn't even want to be that. And all of a sudden, I'm raising my hand. So the power of the fellowship had me do something I said I would never do, even though I don't even know what it is. So I remember when I read the foreword and it said that the stockbroker was relieved of his alcoholic obsession from a sudden spiritual experience. All of a sudden, August 5th made so much sense. I'm like, no wonder I couldn't explain it. And we didn't have recordings back then, right? Man, you guys are so lucky you can look at a recording. I used to be, whatever she'd say, I'd make sure I caught everything because I heard, I kid you not, I heard that I would be doing the same thing as Loretta and Sydney. What was so powerful was the fellowship that I was creating around me. All the people that were sitting at that table. We couldn't get off the corner. We couldn't get off the corner of 138th Street and Lenox Avenue. We would be in the workshop for an hour and another hour on the corner talking about this book and these experiences that we're having that we don't even understand them, but everybody else is experiencing them. So we felt like, okay, well, maybe this thing is real because you're also, you know, no different than when Bill went to Dr. Silkworth and he says, Doctor, am I okay? And he says, you better hang on to it. And there wasn't a lot of meetings, big book meetings in New York at the time. And I was able to say I was a recovered alcoholic because that's what it said. And I noticed that there were some people that had issue with that. And we were a little arrogant, I ain't gonna lie. We were talking about page 52. Good, knowing good and goddamn well. A lot of people had no idea what page 52 was, but we're like, page 52. Oh, Jesus Christ. And see, and then I went to Fellowship of the Spirit in New York, you know, and I heard Chris Reimer, and we became little Chris Reimers in New York City, right? My first conference, and Loretta and City made sure that we were connected to the people in AA that were living a spiritual program. You know, it wasn't the book, it wasn't the steps, it was guiding we were all going home. You know, we were pulled from the gates of hell so that we can go home. And I remember my first Fellowship of the Spirit meeting, it was Mark and Dave. And I remember I sat in that front row and I just cried. Because I didn't know how I got there. I walked around in a daze. I'm like, who are these people? See, I didn't even speak when I was around the recovered alcoholics. I remember I was sitting in Loretta's house and Peter walked in, Peter Marinelli. And so I knew, I'm like, wait a minute, there's something powerful happening here that God placed me. And so I just did a lot of listening. because I knew I wasn't this great big such and much that I thought I was. And I believed what they said. Loretta said, when you're doing your fourth step, I want you to say a prayer and you ask God to reveal who should be on your list, who you're angry at, who irritates you, who you're holding a grudge against. And I didn't argue. Why? Because they had the it that I've always wanted all of my life. My one question was, how do I know I'm done? And she says, when your pen stops writing. And I was willing to believe it because of my first step experience. I knew at that point that, you know what, I'm not going to rely on my thinking mind because all it does is lie to me. It lied to me about alcohol. It lies to me about me, and it lies to me about you. And so when I said that third step prayer that I was going to transfer my thinking and my actions over to God, I was not going to rely on my thinking to write my fourth step because then God becomes a side issue. So I was willing to trust. And of course, my mind wanted to question everybody that I put down. But I realized this is not a threesome. It's not me, my mind, and God. Like, it's interesting. My mind couldn't protect me, but yet it wants to be part of this process over there. And I'm so glad that I was willing to believe because from my first inventory, kindergarten came up. And I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. I wasn't thinking about this. But I was able to see at a very early age that I worried about what you thought about me. See, I had peed in my pants and the nun put a diaper on me, and I was mortified because my classmates were laughing at me. So from a very early age, I realized I worried about what you thought about me. And I also saw if you did something to me that I didn't like, I hated you. I hated that nun. So I was able to see that this was all through my life. And so as I'm writing, I'm seeing people from a different perspective. And so my belief in God started turning into faith. I was willing to believe because of what I saw in other people, but I started to really have faith in God when I realized, wait a minute, what I'm seeing here is not coming from my mind, from my thoughts. Willing to go to any length. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path, but we do so much loitering. I'm very grateful I had sponsors like sponsors, teachers, guides. I mean, the title was interchangeable with me, but I'm so glad that they gave me deadlines. I remember I was doing a piece of work with Adrian, and he said, okay, Donna, you need to be done with this inventory. And it's interesting because he gave me this 7 deadly sin inventory. And it was interesting because I just thought, like, what it did, it threw my ego off because I was like, oh my God, what kind of inventory is this? Like all of a sudden, like I thought I knew what I thought I knew what I was going to be writing. And then all of a sudden he hit me with this new thing and my mind is like, whoa, what's this inventory? Oh my goodness, he gave me a deadline. I took a day off of work and sat in City Hall Park in the financial district and wrote until my hand was cramping. See, that's what willingness to go to any length looks like for me. I also would always carry some sheets of inventory in my bag when I was going to work because, see, I know my mind. If I wait till I get home, this ego of mine will tell me I don't have enough time to do inventory because all of a sudden I have to wash dishes before I go to bed. You know how many times I don't wash dishes before I go to bed when I'm doing inventory? Oh my goodness, I have to wash the dishes. So I would carry sheets and it was amazing because it was like time would just open up and I would just be led to write. There was a bench outside my office. That bench had been there. Do you know that one day I saw that bench and it felt like I was guided and I just sat there. I didn't care who was walking by and I just started writing. And I usually write until it becomes uncomfortable. There's something about writing inventory that's so different than writing like a paper for work or something from school. It's an emotional thing. And I usually write until it becomes a little bit too uncomfortable and I say a prayer. I always pray after I write because I don't want to walk around open to all of this, the past, all of these feelings. I always feel like I'm like Cher start looking like I'm going through the steps, but like 4 was just so powerful. And my first fit step, I did fit steps twice with men, which was very humbling. Because I always felt that I had to have this image around men, and to be able to sit across from another human being who is of the opposite sex and feel comfortable is an amazing experience. It also breaks the myth that I'm separated from you. I think the fifth step is the first opportunity that we realize that we are not separated from one another, because God in that room, spirit to spirit. And it's so powerful that even on a Zoom, because I know a lot of us do fit steps on Zoom, even in Zoom, I can see when the spirit is moving another human being. And what I do, I just give them space, and I just sit for as long as I need to sit, because I can feel that something is happening in and through them in spite of them. And usually we get to see ourselves and another human being from God's perspective, and it's powerful. And for me, that's when I got to see I am no more, no less than you. That's when I get to see that how dare you, Donna, you want these people to love you and to respect you and do all these things, but you're not even doing it for you. And that it's not that people wouldn't do better and treat you kinder and do all these things. Perhaps they couldn't. Wouldn't and couldn't, two different thought processes. And then we start building this fellowship that we crave. And then we get to see the best that we could do without God. See, that's the thing. I've never beaten myself over what I saw. I got to see, okay, Don, what's your choice to be? Either God is everything or God is nothing. And if God is nothing, you better be comfortable with these defects of character. But the more I stay here, see, even when I went through the work the first time, I realized what my purpose was going to be. To be of help to other people, to be purposeful. And self-will living is not going to cut the mustard, it's going to interfere with that. And I remember when I saw my first list, I was like, you got to be kidding me. This is me. So I was glad to have God take it, and God is glad to take it. But see, it's so interesting, the spiritual journey, because we need to see ourselves. Because if you tell me about me, my mind will tell me, oh, you're just jealous of me. That's why you're saying that. Or you're just critical, or you're just judging me. But when I see it, then I can be accountable, and I can say to you, you know what, you're right. See, before I used to say, oh, get over yourself. Or I would say I was just joking if I said something mean and nasty and you brought it to my attention. I'd play it off and say, oh, girl, I was just joking. That was my life. And what does God do in step 6? He goes, let me take that from you. And I'm going to give you what you need so you can live the life I've always wanted you to have. We become extensions of God. We become God in human form. We become vessels. But I've got some things that are blocking that flow. I use the expression of a older person walking down the street with 2 heavy bags. They're not walking fast. They keep stopping, putting the bags down because they're out of breath. They're exhausted. That's what self-will living is like. Being driven, we're exhausting ourselves, full of fear. And God says, let me take those bags from you. They're weighing you down. And he gives us what we need. And all of a sudden, it's not about good. It's not about bad. It's about living. I had an experience with envy and jealousy. And see, the beautiful thing today is when those things crop up, boy, does my foundation feel like it's being shaken. I had to do with my sister. My sister's 4 years younger. She's been a part of life all her life. See, I was apart from life from my 20s to 44 years old. I wasn't building a future. My sister built a wonderful future. She's got a wonderful husband. I dated guys that were like me. See, if you're an alcoholic and you date an alcoholic, the alcoholic that you're dating can't tell you anything about your drinking. See, I didn't know how to play that game. She called me up and said, "Oh, Kevin and we rented a 5-bedroom house in Martha's Vineyard. You want to come?" And all of a sudden, man, the envy and jealousy washed over me. I remember I was standing right by my printer. I was losing sight of the gifts that I bear. See, I was jealous of her gifts, the fruits of her labor. The fruits of her labor is financial security because she worked hard. She married a husband that worked hard. All of a sudden, the fruits of her labor seem more important than mine. And all of a sudden, in that moment, because I paused long enough, I was able to come right back to center and say, "Yo, but Donna, what about your fruits? Look what you're able to do for God." And I was able to relax in that. I also was able to say out loud when people said, "Oh, Donna, do you want to come do this for us, with us?" I'm able to say, "You know what? I can't afford it right now." See, I was always I didn't want to say because I worried about what you thought about me because I'm a senior citizen on a fixed income. I ain't never been on a fixed income before. Ah! But I was able to tell people, "Look, I can't afford it." And all of a sudden, it lost its power over me. My sister and I was able to have a conversation. And I shared all this with her. She was able to help me out with some things. And she called me up the other day after she sent me this text. And so she and I are going to partner together and we're going to do retreats for women that are over 55. See, that would have never happened if I had been holding on to envy and jealousy. See, and the thing that was so powerful is the people that I work with, my sponsees and people that sit in my workshops, they traveled this process with me. I shared about the envy and the jealousy. I shared about how I did a 10-step immediately. I was in the UPS store. This is funny. The woman had walked away to go do something, and I'm looking at my phone and I see my sister and her husband on the plane. Oh my God. I got so angry because they was on the plane. And I stood there and I stood and I got still. I paused and I waited until it washed over me. It was so powerful. I waited until that feeling left. And then I was able to come back to present. And it worked out because the lady came back. People didn't know what I was doing in that moment. And then when I walked outside, I picked up my phone and I did a 10-step. See, my 10 steps are like this. Oh my, I turn on the microphone. Oh my God. I can't believe how jealous I was over my sister's good fortune. God, please remove my jealousy and my envious over other people, and enable me to feel grateful for and happy for other people. And I went right into step 7. God, have all of me. I give all of me to all of you. And I kept it moving and I shared it with my sponsor and I shared it with some other people. This is how I live today. I think sometimes I don't pause because I think that's for me to learn something in that situation, or perhaps maybe I'm supposed to be impatient so that you can learn patience. Maybe God is using me for you. I don't know. But all I know is that I'm willing to say that 1 + 1 is 1. I remember when Rashid said that 1 + 1 is 1, I didn't understand. See, there was a lot of things, trust me, a lot of things that my elders were saying that I didn't understand, but I understood. That's the crazy thing. It just, for some strange reason, I didn't argue it. See, because I think on August 5th, 2000, not only did I get surrendered, I believe my spirit blossomed and my spirit opened, and that enabled me to hear. So I just wasn't listening. See, when I listen, I'm not really hearing you because I'm too busy arguing about what you're saying, and I can't wait to debate or follow up with what I think I know. But I was able to hear some things that didn't make sense, and my mind didn't doubt it. You know, it reminds me when Bill saw Ebby when Ebby came to the door, and he knew something had happened, and Ebby didn't have to say anything, right? And so he asked him in my Donna voice, "Yo, man, what happened?" And Ebby said, "I got religion," right? And Bill said two things were going on: disappointed and curious. See, his ego was disappointed. Ah, man, that's not what I want to hear. I don't hear anything about religion. I think the spirit enabled him to be curious. And the curiosity had more power than the ego that wanted him to be disappointed. And I don't think that we give enough credit to curiosity. See, it's my curiosity that leads into the willingness. And that curiosity enabled Bill to have the willingness to sit with Ebby, be led to sit with Ebby. And so we should always be curious. Be okay and not know, because trust me, that's how we live our lives. Am I okay and not know? And that's very uncomfortable. My ego does not like not knowing. I've been using this example, so it might be played out for those that have heard it before, but it's just like being a passenger in a car and you're not driving. Oh, Lord, we're not there yet. How come it's taking so long? How come it's so many lights? You sure you're going the right way? Like, it is so hard to relax because you don't know where you're going. And then on the way back, because you do know the route, you turn to the driver and say, "Oh my God, we got here so quick." So am I willing to be a passenger in life and not know? Am I willing to master not knowing the same way I've mastered fear, doubt, and worry? The only reason why that's my default is because that's always been my default. So it's so easy to go back to that. It's familiar. It's just as uncomfortable. So am I willing to sit in some new uncomfortability? And the new uncomfortability will have saner results. I'm all for that. I also, oh man, you know, sharing in meetings, the one thing I love about in-person meetings is I get a chance to physically connect. Like before I would share, I would just scan the room. And I'm not looking at you, looking at what you're wearing or what you look like, but I'm scanning spirit. That makes sense to anybody. And I remember Rashid had told me, if you're at a meeting and you're sharing and there's a table and a chair, you get up from that table, you get up from that chair and you stand in front of that table because you don't want anything to separate you from others. And again, I did what he did, what he told me. There were many things. I remember when I was about to do night step amends, and I was sitting with Rashid and some of his sponsees who had worked with him longer than me. They had been on this path longer. And it's amazing about the path, right? Like we're on this path at different time frames, but we're still shoulder to shoulder. Like, how do you do that? So this spiritual life defies logic. Like I'm 25 years, you're 5 years, you're a year, but we're still shoulder to shoulder because we're always in the now with each other. Because I can't be way down there. Because if I'm way down there, I can't be of service to you if I think you're way back there. And then it stops me from thinking I'm this great big such a much. So I remember when it was about 9-step amends, and they would say, when you're willing to make amends, God will have people appear. And it sounded kind of do, but I was willing to believe them. And sure enough, I was standing on 59th Street, very crowded train station, Columbus Circle, and I hear somebody say, "Donna Jonas." I turned around and it was somebody who I had been looking for on my list. Amazing. People don't understand the we. It's a mighty we. I think it's right up there with the word be. I never knew how to be. Both are two letters of the alphabet, and both took a journey. Took me a journey to find the we and Alcoholics Anonymous, and it took a journey for me to learn how to be. And there are times, trust me, that my ego still wants to nip at me. I remember sharing in a meeting, and I always feel like this is another story that I shared a lot, so bear with me if you heard it before. But if you think about, what do we do when we share? I don't care if it's a 10-minute share, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. I feel like I'm jumping double dutch right now. But look at all the principles that we practice: honesty, accountability. We're teaching, we're connecting, we're being vulnerable, we're laughing. Those are things of spirit. And so after we share, now I'm pretty sure you guys can identify with this. After we share, the ego wants to be back in first position, and all it does is does what it always does. It wants us to say, well, how come you shared this and how come you didn't share that? And you sure you did okay? See, once I caught on, see, it takes a minute to catch on. I remember Rashid said, this ain't about catching up, it's about catching on. When I caught on, because I'm like, damn, why am I focusing on everything like so negative? And I realized, well, that's just my ego, because I had pushed it aside. And when I'm done sharing, it wants to jump right back in first. And it does what it does. So when it does it now, I know it's a lie. I know it's the imposter. So I share that because we should never be afraid to share with one another. Number one, it's your story. It's your experience. You're sharing your honesty. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to, what is it, posture. Be yourself. What freedom. You know, I look at the pain and misery, I look at the pain from my childhood, and I look at the pain in my using and my drinking. See, because when you don't have power and control and choice of whether you're going to drink or not, your behavior matches that. The more you drink, the more you lie. The more you drink, the more you cheat. The more you drink, the more irresponsible. And all you're doing is you're hating yourself. And thank God they said that we're not moral failures. We suffer from an illness. And that was so relieving for me, because it made me realize that, you know what, if I suffer from an illness, there's a solution. And I think that's why they use the word cure, because for illnesses, you think about a cure. Doesn't mean that we're cured from the illness, but I understand why they use that term. And so I'm grateful for you guys allowing me to be here, because I know I took y'all on a ride today, because I took myself on a ride. So thank you so much. What a good way for me to end my evening. Thank you.